What's up, everybody? I'm Henry from Speed Culture, and today we're here to talk about the 2JZ engine. Who doesn't want to swap a 2J into their car? So I'm going to tell you about my experiences. I've had a total of 6 different motors in this car, from Ballin to budget. Let me tell you what I've learned over these years and what I've boiled down to the perfect street setup. So let's get into it. So my setup here, this is a 2003 Lexus IS300 with a 1JZ VVTi head and a 2JZ non-VVTi GE bottom end. From factory, these cars come with a 2JZ GE with an overhead intake, comes over across like this, see picture here. That motor is good for all of 250 horsepower. I mean, the way it sits without opening the motor, that's a 350 horsepower capable with a turbo motor all day. You know, you could beat on it like that. Sure, you can make a little bit more, but it's gonna blow up. The trans from factory that comes in this car is glass. That will blow up past 300 horsepower. So, this car in particular has an all-154 trans, which comes from a JZX Chaser. It also comes from the Mark III Supra. The trans that's in this car is a tripod trans, which is technically the better all-154. It's a little less notchy. I like it, it works. I still miss 6th gear. I would love T56 so that I'd be cruising a little bit lower RPM, but we take what we can get. So let's get into it. My first setup in this car was a full 1JZ VVTi. So that is a 2.5 liter bottom end with the 1JZ VVTi head. Personally, I love the way the 1J VVTi sounds, and that is why I went in that direction. Now this motor's connotation is a 1.5 JZ. Typically, people only find their way here when they've blown up the factory 2.5 liter, the 1JZ VVTi bottom end. So in my case, my car with the full 1JZ VVTi setup, a drift motion manifold. At the time, it was a journal bearing 6262, also from Drift Motion. I think it just had a Garrett internals with their housing. That made 440 wheel. That was a great setup. It was a map setup. And I think personally, that was some of the most fun I've had in this car until now. And we'll get here in a minute. But that 440 wheel horsepower setup, I drove all around the country. I put 50,000 miles on that setup. It was awesome. I drove from New York to Buffalo, from Buffalo to Florida for various track days to Canada and all that, everywhere. Super fun. 440 horsepower, it's not enough to get you in trouble. You can still find yourself in it, but it's more than enough to have fun with. That was a very solid, to the point, great setup. In that setup, I love stock bottom ends. I'm not building these motors to be record breakers. I'm not building these motors to go to the drag strip and be the fastest one there. I'm not building these motors to be the fastest one on the street. This car at this point makes about, I'd say, anywhere between 600 and 650 horsepower, probably like, let's say, 620-ish. And it's mega fun. It beats what I need it to beat on the street. And again, I don't need it to beat anything. It's more just for fun for me. But when the occasional race comes out, it does its job. It's not going to do much against a 700 horsepower ZR1 Corvette. That's just the way it is. You got to find where you're happy and stay there, because someone's always going to have more money, someone's always going to have more time, more opportunities to be able to just put money at it and make more power. So find where you're happy and stay there. And this is where I found that I'm happy. And I think a lot of you would agree. So first setup was a 1JZ VVTi making 440 wheel for about 5 years.
The JDM-ified Lexus IS300. It is a cousin of the Supra and its ilk, right from the factory. This one, with its Toyota Chaser powertrain swap, has been really further JDM-ified.
So Henry, the owner of this IS300, drove 20 hours from where he lives to here in Florida, and I could see doing a road trip with this car. I really could.
In general, this car is actually quite comfortable and roomy, especially considering the racing seats.
Super fun. AEM V2 computer, 880cc DW injectors, a cruddy old Mishimoto catch can. Nothing was special about that setup, and that's the best part about it. You know, it was just a usable setup. Forgive me, it's hot as heck down here, so I'm sweating a little bit. Anyway, the next setup after that was a 2JZ GTE bottom end. I got a brand new 0-mile 2JZ GTE bottom end. That was my Ballin setup. I probably spent about 15 grand on putting that motor together. It was a 0-mile motor from Toyota. It was very cool. It was cool to see it out of the box and all that cool stuff. In terms of stuff on it, you do the billet tensioner from Real Street. You do an ATI or a fluid amper harmonic balancer. That is a giant thing with swapped 2Js and 2Js in general. If you're trying to make power on a 2J, you gotta do those things. Billet tensioner, you don't want your tensioner to fall apart, and harmonic balancer, fluid amper, or ATI. I run a fluid amper, and it's never done me wrong. I've had this on this motor on actually 6 different motors, 5 different. The first one was the OEM motor. Now, granted, I've only blown up 3 of those motors. The other 3 of those motors were pulled out to make adjustments. So, anyway, moving on. Take care of those things. That's the important part. Run injectors that are quality. Injector dynamics, that's the stuff right there. So, back to the old setup. Brand new 2JZ GTE bottom end and fully built 1JZ VVTi head. This head was built by John Kazi Racing down in Georgia. They build 3,500 horsepower boat motors, offshore racing boat motors. Very cool stuff. Building the 1J head is something I would never do again. I'm happy I did it, and I wouldn't change a thing. However, finding the parts, finding specs, maintainability after the fact, getting cam seals, and 1J heads are cumbersome. They're cool. I think they're great when they're OEM. At this point, I've spent the time and the money, and it's already built, and I'm happy with it. Would I urge you to go in this direction? No. I'd say go ahead and buy yourself a 2JZ GE head. And again, I'm going to boil this down to my ideal setup if I was going to redo it again, right? I'm happy with the way this thing came out over the years. It's a result of learning and things that I love, pure passion. So the 1J head, that's something that had to stay for me. I love the way that the valve cover integrates really nicely with the spark plug cover, and it looks like one giant valve cover. Super cool to me. I love it. So 1J head, right? For me, that had to stay. For you, nowadays, it's not worth investing in. Anyway, moving on. Then I had the 2J bottom end, brand new 2J bottom end. That setup ended up blowing up. That was mostly my fault. Little bit here and there. Valve covers were pushing a lot of oil. I didn't refill it as I kept emptying the catch can, and less and less oil. I was driving from Georgia to Charlotte, long trip. I wasn't paying attention. I was excited. This is when I moved to Charlotte. Wasn't paying attention. I ended up doing a pull, and there was like 2 quarts of oil in it, and bam, spun a bearing. You know, that's given. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Anyway, that setup was great. It was a lot of money. Like I said, that bottom end goes for like 4,500 bucks nowadays, which is not bad. It's really not that bad. But if I were gonna do it again, which I did, obviously, I had to get the car ready for my wedding. So we put a non-VVTi GE bottom end in this. Now, let's get to my recommendation. So you could spend $4,500 on a GTE block, or you could find a non-VVTi GE bottom end from an older GS300, like a 96 GS300, or an SC300, or an NA Supra. Any of those have that bottom end. You want the non-VVTi bottom end. The VVTi bottom end is what comes in this car, and that's like what I said, no good. Will get you nowhere. So if you go ahead and purchase the non-VVTi bottom end, that motor is good for anywhere between 600 and 1,000 horsepower if you keep the torque out of it. So you don't want a turbo that's any smaller than this. This is, I'd say, the smallest turbo size that would actually work. This turbo is a 6262. Anything smaller than this is going to light up in the lower RPMs, and it's going to put too much stress on it, and you're going to bend a rod. With the non-VVTi GE bottom end, you're going to want to keep torque out of the low end. So that's where this turbo comes in, perfect setup. So that bottom end costs about 600 bucks to 1,000 bucks. I paid 800 bucks for mine. That's great, right? you don't have to spend all the money in the world. Jared Ward, he has the stock block world record on the non-VTI GE bottom end. He ran a 174 at 8:076 or something like that. But an 8-second pass in a Supra, and that was making around 1,400 horsepower, and they were jamming on that bottom end, and they were doing it over and over and over again, completely unopened. So it stands the test, and it stands the test of time. This setup, again, is making about 620, 630 horsepower, and it's gonna live here. And you wanna keep it as OEM as possible. So back to the head. For head recommendations, I'd say go ahead and buy yourself a 2JZ GE head from an IS300. They're dirt cheap. Sold one for like $100 not too long ago. You can get them anywhere. They're cheap. Go to a junkyard, pull the head. All you need is head build parts. You're gonna need to build a head no matter what. So you'll need cams, you'll need valve springs and retainers, you'll need valve stem steel. Yeah, that's really it. This setup is not shimless bucket. I'm still running shims, and I'm not revving it high enough for it to matter. It's revving to about 85, 8,600 RPM, and that's where I need it to be. It's happy. So that setup right there is your ish. I run a radium rail. I run ID 1300X injectors. I'm running an AEM V2. The V2 is all I'll ever need. I can run boost by speed. That's what we have it dialed in on now with Lawrence Shipman tuning it, and it's perfect. It runs perfect. I'm running a Ford IAC. The way that the idle control is stout, it's seamless, and it's great. It doesn't get any better than that. Now looking at it, let's see if I missed anything. I'm running AC on this car. You're gonna wanna run AC. It's not something that you're gonna like, look at this, I'm sweating my ass off. AC is the best thing for you. In a 600 horsepower setup, you can do it all day. You can do an 800 horsepower setup. You can do an 1,000 horsepower setup. But in my opinion, this is just where these things are happy, and you could really just enjoy it. And that was my problem in between the 440 wheel horsepower setup and now. It was a lot of stress. It's a lot expensive motors, stuff happening, and you're dealing with a lot. This inherently is a non-worry setup, and that to me is worth everything. I can get in this car and just go. I can get in this car, turn it on, and just drive to work, not worry about whether it's going to turn on or not later on, you know? And those are the things that separate a polished build from a thrown together hoopty. And it makes you want to drive. If you have a car that's 2J swap, this and that, and you're worried about overheating, you're worried about this and that, it's just going to become a giant pain in your ass. And no one wants a very expensive $60,000, $70,000 pain in your ass. You want something that you can drive and enjoy. And that's why I think this setup is your stuff. So go ahead, get yourself a 2JZ GE head, get yourself a non-VTI bottom end, get yourself a manifold, a T4 manifold, turbo manifold from Drift Motion. Get it from anywhere. It doesn't really matter. Make sure that it's held together well. The Future Fab stuff is great. It's a little expensive. In my opinion, I wouldn't spend it. I'm still running the same Drift Motion manifold as I was 10 years ago. So get yourself a good turbo. That's where it's good to spend money. It's good to spend money in the head build, in the cams, in the valve springs and retainers. I'm running GSC conical valve springs and retainers. I'm running GSC valve stem seals. I'm running BC 264 cams. And I like the 264s just because they're mild. I wanted to do the 272s or the 274s and the the GSC Stage 2s. They sound fucking sick. I've watched so many videos of Supras sounding like that. It's the coolest thing ever. However, it's just not the best for street driving, you know? And that's what it comes down to. This is a street car. I still have the factory intake manifold, and that was on purpose. I didn't want to get a giant 90mm throttle body. Every time you get off the gas, the car goes, blah, you know, like it's just uncomfortable. The idea is OEM throttle body. It acts like an OEM 2J. You don't need to do all these things to your 2Js. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to spend all your money. You don't need to, like, OEM is best. Improve on the things that need to be improved on, harmonic balancers and billet tensioners. And like I said, if you're gonna go over 500 horsepower, that's where you need cams and a head build. Slight, doesn't need to be crazy. Just get the job done. Make sure, you don't need to spend all your money. All you need to do is get yourself a non-VTI GE bottom end, a GE head, and do a slight build on it, and you'll be $5,000 into a build, and that thing will last forever. You can make 800 on it, easy. And just put a 64, 66 on it. This is a 62, 62. I do more street driving, mountain stuff, track stuff, smaller track stuff. It could be work for big track stuff too. It's got 410 gears. It lights up everywhere, and it's awesome. But if I wanted to, I could put a 64, 66 on it, make 800, and be comfortable. However, I don't want to put big fender flares on it because it's not going to be able to put the power down. This is where it's living. And that's why I think this is a great setup for anybody doing it today. So if you're going to build your 2J today, you don't have to spend all your money. You don't have to save for the work for the end of world scenario. Go to a junkyard, get the parts you can, make sure it looks good, inspect everything. And if it does, send it. Send it, send it, send it. As an added thing, for trans setup, you also don't need to do anything crazy. I'm running an ACT single disc 6-puck clutch. I think it rides great. I think it's easy to shift. I think if I put my wife in it, she'd be able to drive it. And it's good for 650, 700 foot-pounds of torque, and we're not making that. So it's perfect. And again, it's a $500, $600 clutch. So you don't need to spend all your money. And sure, do I have the money to throw more at this and go for a bigger setup? Maybe. But why? What's the point? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Use what works and use what works well and expand on the other things. OEM valve covers, just leave them. Keep it as OEM as possible and just do those small things that I mentioned before, and you are going to be set. You got this. I believe in you. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I have no problem doing more of these videos. I'm going to do a video on the fitment of this car. A lot of questions I get often, I'm just going to address in these videos. So I hope this helped somebody. Sorry if I rambled for too long. And let's hear this thing. I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.